there's going to be no end of really smart engineers building powerful systems that are going to impact everybody. The real awkward thing about hallucinations is you can't engineer them out of the AI. The electricity consumed by those data centers is going to shoot up. And the carbon emissions from those data centers that are powered by fossil fuel power sources, that's going to increase as well. She said to me, I love ChatGPT. It's my best friend. This poor lady almost started crying because I'd reduced her best friend, her confidant, her companion to what it really is. I think it is here to stay, so embrace it and be open to it. But I think be really careful when you use it.
Hello, welcome to AI with GenAI. I'm your host, GennAi. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Paul Dongha to the podcast. Dr. Paul is a pioneering figure in the transformational potential of AI and stands at the forefront of integrating AI within financial services, championing an approach that harmonizes technological advancement with corporate integrity, sustainability, and the responsible use of AI. With a career spanning over 30 years, Paul has cultivated a reputation for visionary leadership, guiding organizations in seizing AI opportunities, whilst maintaining a steadfast commitment to ethical principles. Paul is the first bank-wide head of responsible AI and AI strategy at one of the UK's largest banks, leading a dedicated team of ethics practitioners and pioneering responsible AI in the UK. He's based in London. Paul has a PhD in artificial intelligence and a master's and bachelor's of science in computer science, and more recently has taught generative AI at Harvard Business School. Thank you for joining us today, Paul.
Oh, lovely to be here, Jen.
So we've heard such an impressive resume, how you've taught AI and generative AI, how you've worked in this area for so many years. But let's go behind your bio. Tell us a bit more of what led you to bringing that more human-centered side of responsible AI and ethical AI.
Well, Jen, I was quite late in my career, actually. I'd worked in financial services for some years, building IT systems and big data systems and so on and so forth. And it was about 2018-19 when I realized that AI was really gaining traction. We were using it more and more, and it was gaining popularity around the world. And I came to realize there's going to be no end of really smart engineers building powerful systems that are going to impact everybody. But how many people are really focusing on the risks of AI and their deficiencies and the potential harms that can come about from AI? It was a moment when I just went, my goodness, someone's really got to get a hold of this topic and really look at it. I have the benefit of having the technical background, so I actually realize how those systems work. I kind of have first-hand experience of knowing where they will fall short. I just dedicated the rest of my career to being in responsible and ethical AI, which I think is just so important.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And it's a great segue to our trio here of the questions we ask of every participant in our podcast, because we're talking about how your experience on the technical side and then financial services and kind of life experience of bringing that together, we're seeing it shape so many different industries. How are you seeing it most shape either financial services or interest areas in sustainability and environment? Tell us more there of how you see it shaping those industries.
Well, I think in financial services, it's already having an impact and that will continue to grow. So we are seeing the use of AI as helping knowledge workers using systems like ChatGPT. And there are many ChatGPT-like models out there from big tech companies and from model development companies. And these are used so we can have assistance when we do our day-to-day work. So if you're a typical worker in a bank, you'll be looking at a screen, copying data, searching, sorting, filtering, extracting data, copying it from one place to another place. So a lot of that kind of knowledge work and data intensive work really lends itself to those kind of technologies, your ChatGPT-like models. So there are many opportunities to really automate many aspects of the jobs those knowledge workers do, to not only automate, to do them quicker, to potentially do them more accurately. And some of those activities are really quite mundane, right? They're quite regular. We do them all the time, and they're not particularly fulfilling. And AI has a real potential there to uplift our daily work. And I hope alleviate some of the tedium, and that time can be used to do something either more productive or activities that we haven't got time for, or new things that would be even more impactful. So I'm seeing it as a knowledge worker assistant for day-to-day activities. There's another big area, a massive area where it's being used, and that's in software development. So many organizations, including financial services organizations, they employ lots of engineers, lots of data scientists, machine learning engineers, programmers, and developers. We've got models out there, ChatGPT-like models, that are particularly suited to writing programming code. What a developer can do is type a prompt and ask the AI to write some code that does A, B, C, D, and E. That prompt is expressed in English, and what comes out is a whole load of programming code. And in some cases, thousands of lines of code. So you can see almost instantly, like, wow, that is a real way of uplifting productivity in the software engineering practice. And it's any software engineering. It's not just using AI-generated code for building AI. It's using AI-generated code for code that's used anywhere. And we're seeing technology companies doing that. And we're seeing companies like financial services, consultancies, even legal companies as well. So those are two big areas. But I think, moreover, there are other kind of almost bigger areas where GenAI is going to help. So one example is financial crime and fraud. Now, if customers think they've been defrauded or victims of financial crime, some organizations are now using AI within their own company to go to different data sources and to gather together information that's going to help the organization help the customer with a particular fraud case. And that's really automating a lot of data, again, data gathering, data filtering and sorting, helping people who are outside of an organization, which are customers, get to the right thing. I think that's going to be a big one. And finally, I think this is going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to be hugely impactful. And that's using AI to personalize interactions with customers. So we all use the web. We all go online for our banking needs, insurance needs, whatever it is. And I think creating an experience for customers that's personalized to what they want and how they want that information delivered so that those products they see online are more relevant, interesting, and potentially really, really useful for them. So I think personalizing interactions with people is going to be another big thing. For example, many apps on your phone, for many banks, and it doesn't have to be just banks, but for many other organizations, they're the same for everybody. It kind of strikes me as odd in this day and age that everything should be the same for absolutely every customer. You can see how it could be tailored in different languages, the web experience or the app experience. It could be in a different tone, a different style. It could have products that are only relevant to that particular customer, for the things they most want to see. I think that kind of possibility is really, really close. There's engineering to do behind it, but AI is going to be central to personalization.
I love that. I love the personalization opportunity of AI. But going back to one of your first examples around fraud detection and fraud analysis, that some people can see AI as just causing risk, but less often we speak about, well, AI can really help us identify these risks as well at the same time, which leads very well then to the second question of the ethical and regulatory challenges. Which ones are the ones either that keep you up at night or you feel that we're not addressing sufficiently at the moment?
Well, that's a big question. So I'll try and be brief. I think the one, and it's talked about a lot, in generative AI, there's a term called hallucinations. So people will say AI hallucinates. So hallucination refers to when an AI system like ChatGPT gives a response and some of it's just factually incorrect. It's potentially made up. There have been many examples of this. Now, those AI systems are getting better and hallucinations are occurring sometimes less often, but in other cases, it's just cropping up all over the place. The real awkward thing about hallucinations is you can't engineer them out of the AI. The thing that makes AI so powerful also as a side effect produces this issue. It's kind of two sides of the same coin. The technical architecture of ChatGPT is something called a transformer model. Excuse me. And a transformer model works by ingesting lots and lots of text. In fact, a lot of these models have been trained on most of the data that's on the internet. So if you think of Wikibooks, Wikipedia, just articles, just all over the web, those models have been trained on all of the words that are there and the sequences of words that are there. So when it operates, it's working off these probabilities. It's very hard to predict what the AI system is going to come out with in its response. So it's very unpredictable. And what that means is these hallucinations sometimes occur. They're just mistakes, right? Hallucinations is the term that some people have given to it, but they're just mistakes. Engineering those out in the system is really, no one's got a solution to that. what a lot of companies do is they trap a response coming from their AI system, it's a GenAI system, and then they check it before releasing that response either to customers or to other people within the organization. So that one does keep me up at night because there just isn't a neat solution. There isn't an all-encompassing solution. There's just checking. And often it's humans checking, right? You can't even automate the checking for hallucinations. In many cases, you can't. So I think that's one. And the other one, and you kind of mentioned it in the previous question, is the whole sustainability of it. AI systems are really harmful to the environment. They're harmful because they're very compute intensive. So there's a lot of computation in just generating one ChatGPT response. It's actually vast. There are hundreds of millions of billions of calculations. When I say calculations, I mean multiplications, right? For those technical listeners that you have, just to generate one response. So when you stand from it, when you look at all of the people that will be using generative AI in the future, the data centers that house the servers that run those models, they're going to grow. And the forecasts, you can read them, right? They're massive. So the electricity consumed by those data centers is going to shoot up. And the carbon emissions from those data centers that are powered by fossil fuel power sources, that's going to increase as well. There are also water is used to cool data centers. There's going to be a strain in some areas on water depletion. So I think the environmental harms of generative AI need to be looked at. And I'm really glad like people are talking about this. I get asked it literally every day. It's what's top of mind for people. And they're like, oh, what about sustainability? So I think in my profession and what I'm doing is really thinking about that really carefully to see how we as organizations that develop AI can do so in a sustainable way, and that we work with tech companies so they too pay attention to this. There's lots of good things happening there as well, but I think that work needs to continue.
Well, there are two great ones there. I know a lot of our listeners would know about the idea of AI hallucinating and the issues with that. And I know some people are calling that confabulation because the concerns of hallucination is a very human thing. And do we want to be anthropomorphizing how we describe this? But you're right that it's errors, it's inaccuracy, it's the inability to trust that what comes out of these systems is going to be accurate, factual, truthful. And how can we use that then if we don't know, oh, one day it's correct, the next day it's not, and how, and in which situations, and how to understand that? And then on the sustainability side, you're right. I get asked a lot about the environmental footprint. I do think the water one had not been discussed sufficiently before. I think it's increasingly being recognized. It's not just an energy cost, it is a water cost as well. But I'm still not sure, especially kind of at national levels, when I read about approvals for data centers, I'm reading about where a lot of these data centers, because of the space needs, are being built in some of the most water-stressed areas of the world and within countries, within regions that are hugely water-stressed. And I'm not sure those local communities have been engaged in those conversations, but I'm also not sure if people are fully being accurate of the implications of these data centers. And yes, they will provide construction jobs for a short amount of time, but they don't actually provide a lot of full-time employment either. So what is the ROI or the cost benefit of having these large data centers when they have that environmental footprint? But I'll try and end on the optimistic note you did as well, which is AI can also be used to address some of these environmental issues. And you talked about some of those before, but it is by taking action and being very aware of those implications of the technology.
Absolutely.
So as we continue on that path, where do you see us getting to this our crystal ball section of in 2050? And I know people both hate and laugh at the question of how can we possibly predict it? But what is the future that you hope we're building, or what future you think we're actually going to get to? So talk us a little bit through your thinking of 2050, what it looks like.
Yeah, that's a tough question, Jen, but I'll give it a go. I think, well, the spoiler alert is it's going to be utopian rather than dystopian, right? So I'll get to the punchline straight away. And what gives me that confidence? I think despite all of the risks and, fabulations, hallucinations, data leaks, automating everything, the lack of human contact, because we will probably use AI a lot more. So there are many, many impacts to society and potentially to jobs, right? Those people who are afraid of losing their careers to AI. But I think if AI is steered in the right way, it has to be actively managed. I don't think it's just going to come up. This utopian vision is just going to come about if we just leave it on its own course and trajectory and so on. So I think everyone has to play a part in ensuring that AI is deployed and used for good, that it's deployed to help people, that it's used to help people who may be disadvantaged, the poorer parts of the world, those areas that don't have good access to technology, that AI can be used and delivered on things like smartphones, used in education. We're seeing great strides in the use of AI for drug discovery, personalized medicine, pharmaceuticals. I mean, some of the inventions, and some of these have come from Google DeepMind, right? They are world leaders in this kind of thing. There is a potential of using AI to almost eradicate disease in the future. I mean, that sounds really amazing, but it's potentially really within reach. It doesn't sound like a fantastical goal given what's happened in the last 3 or 4 years. The use of it for medical purposes, the use of it in education, automating jobs, everyday jobs that are mundane, allowing people more time to maybe do the work that they really want to do. I think all of those things combined will mean that we can harness the good bits of AI and use it in a way that's going to help us. But at the same time, we have to devote so much attention to mitigating the harms of AI. And I think we have to actually work at that so those things don't get out of hand. And I kind of give you one example, Jen. I think we've learned from the lessons of social media, the harms that it can inflict on the younger generation. So those people that become maybe more isolated and too reliant on social media, the impact that has on society, the impact that it has on families, the impact that it has on our ability to socialize and feel secure in social human settings. I think some of those values and some of what really makes us human could be impacted. So I think the medical profession and other professionals have to lean into that topic and really think, how do we ensure we nurture a good society and those values that we take for granted at the moment? I think that's got to be actively managed. It's got to be really looked at. Maybe the use of AI will free up more people to think about those things so that we can harness the AI and help society all at the same time. And with respect to jobs, here's another one. I think some people say, AI is going to take over lots of jobs and we'll all be out of work and so on. So I actually don't believe that's true at all. I think when we look back, we've seen technological waves in the past. The launch of the World Wide Web, pretty much in the year 2000, the launch of PCs, cash points when they came out in the 70s. People say, there won't be any need for banks and all bank tellers won't need to work because there'll be a hole in the wall and everyone will get their money that way. Well, look, what's happened since those technological feats have come about? There's been new jobs, there's been new industries, there's been whole heaps of jobs. How many web developers were there in 1993? Well, zero. How many are there now? Well, I don't know if you can count them. It's whole industries that have shaped and impacted and changed the world, mostly for the good, right? I would say. I kind of feel that AI has that potential to invent new work and jobs that just don't exist and jobs whose names we can't imagine because they just don't exist. So I think a lot more of that will happen. But let's use AI and ensure that we use it in a positive way. That's why I really embrace it. I say to people, embrace it, work with it, but use it in a way that's really positive. And remember, AI is just a tool. So I'm more utopian, but I don't think it's going to happen on its own.
No, I love that. And I love the reminder it is a tool. And I talked about this in one of my other recent conversations, that this anthropomorphization of the technology or calling agentic AI team members, I don't like that. I think it removes the humanity from our actual team members and how we work together. But it can and will be and is already for many people a powerful tool. And I love your wording there of embracing it, but also how you said about nurturing the world that we want to live in involves us being conscious of not just the potential of AI right now, but also its risks, and providing those guardrails and making sure that it can move towards this utopian future, but it requires thoughtfulness and responsibility around that. So I also want to believe in, especially some of the areas you spoke about, drug discovery, improving all of our healthful years, not just longevity of life, but healthful. How do we all, and not just live longer, but live stronger, live better as well as we get older, and the promise of AI to do that, but being conscious of doing that properly and well and navigating that as well. So definitely appreciate your more utopian. Yes, I do think people also think that people who work in responsible AI, we're always thinking about the dystopian. It's like, no, we believe we can get to such a great future with AI, but we also recognize that doesn't happen without this management of the risks and acknowledgement of the harms as well. So, yeah. Great. Well, this is our pivot to we're living in the future right now. We're already embracing the technology. You and I, we use the advanced technology in order to identify where it could go wrong. What are the potential, not just positive sides of it, but also potential issues. So I used generative AI to generate the next series of questions. So we have two sets of questions. The first set, there's three options you'll get to choose from. This is AI ethics and more technology, the tech side of questions. And then the next three have been generated to be more getting deeper into your personal values, motivations, how you think about the world around you. So you'll just choose one of the questions for our group. This is our GenAI lens, where you'll choose 1, 2, or 3 of the first question, which is focused a bit more on the tech side of things.
Hey, Jen, I feel like a 3 today.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay. So this one is around human uniqueness. What big life questions will AI never be able to answer?
Right, Jen. So I guess this leads me to think what AI can never replace that's so human. Things like consciousness, real empathy, real understanding, these kind of really deeply human-like values that we hold so dear, but we take for granted, like it's just about being humanness. I don't think AI can ever get to that. Now, there's going to be a lot of people going to listen and go, hold on, AI is empathetic. Look, if I type this into ChatGPT, I'm feeling really miserable. It comes back with a really nice response. And I say, it does. But it comes back with responses based on reading lots of text with what you've said in it and predicting how it should respond. But that is a computation. That is a machine doing something because it's kind of instructed to. It's not really empathetic. It's not empathetic in the way that your friend would be empathetic, or your mum or your dad when they hear you're in distress. And that real uniqueness, also in the eyes of the person that is distressed, what they feel when a human responds is a really unique feeling. And I think the danger of AI is it puts in your mind that it really does understand. It really empathizes like a human. And that's just wrong. It's just completely wrong. I think that's one of the other societal risks. So I think AI is never going to reach what it is to be conscious, the ability to self-reflect, the ability to reason about one's own self. Those kind of really deep things, it's just a program working off probabilities, really quite unpredictably, just based on text that it's seen in the past. The GenAI has been trained on, it doesn't capture everything human. You know, like written language is just a small spectrum of everything. You think of like voice, video, animation. There's lots of information in lots of other things around the world. GenAI has been trained on text. That's just a small fraction of everything we know about. And even above and beyond that, how do you really capture things like empathy, things like emotion, things like true feeling? These to me are beyond what a bit of silicon can really do. So I think those are some of the things that it won't ever do. People also talk, Jen, about artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence. There is a slight difference. Artificial superintelligence refers to AI that we create that self-improves so much that it exceeds anything a human can do, hence the word superintelligence. And the fear that this is somehow going to be unleashed and do things that we simply can't control. There is a risk that can happen, like it's a long-term risk. And I think we as a community have to work on what that might be. So I know that last one doesn't really answer your question properly, but I think it's another one of those really far out things that people do talk a lot about. I'll pause there on the kind of the human uniqueness side that I think AI is just not going to really do, but could fool us into thinking it can do. I've got if I may, it's a little story. I went out for one of these corporate dinners a few months ago, and I was with a technology company. And there was a lady it was about 10 of us, there was a lady sat there having dinner who works in another financial services organization. And she said to me, "Oh, Paul, I love ChatGPT. It's my best friend." And I said, "Okay." I said, "You do realize it's just like a computer program." "It is a computer program." And she said, "But it really is my best friend." I said, "No." And I quickly described in a very broken way how it actually works. this poor lady almost started crying because I'd reduced her best friend, her confidant, her companion to what it really is. And I felt terrible, obviously, we're having dinner. I didn't want to upset anyone. But again, it just points out here was a smart person, very educated, right, who actually just couldn't believe that didn't really have feelings. And I was saying, he doesn't really understand you. She really believed it could. I was really surprised. I was very surprised.
No, and it's an important story because we also are seeing this more in news media about people using them as companions, and some, take quite serious steps down this road of dependency and manipulation as well. But that manipulation, it also humanizes this tool that is just following probabilities. And I do think we have to tell these tough truths, because that is part of responsibilities, is education and awareness. And I think it's very important to have these conversations, especially now when there's still time to influence how people see these technologies. So the next one is more the personal background and formative experience. So again, 1, 2, or 3.
Right, I'm going to have to go for one now, since I mentioned one last.
I'm the one. Okay.
Let's go.
This is personal responsibility in the AI climate nexus. So given the dual nature of AI as both a powerful tool for addressing climate change and a technology with environmental costs, how do our individual values and personal responsibilities about environmental stewardship translate into action? So quite wordy there, but basically it's, do we have individual responsibilities in terms of AI and climate?
Yeah, good question. Yes, absolutely. I think we should take individual responsibility for our use of AI. The reason is, in much the same way as we do in other areas of our life, there are more people driving electric vehicles. There are a lot more people recycling. We're very careful about packaging, disposing of unwanted plastics and so on. So all of that hard work that's actually really come about through climate activism, if you kind of go back 30, 40 years, it's actually only because a lot of people in the world got very concerned about greenhouse gas emissions and the ozone layer. And through collective action and voices being heard and protests and demonstrations around the world, did companies take that seriously as well and help society to do the right thing? I think AI is exactly the same. It has a potential to make great profits for the tech companies that build these systems, right? That's number one. But we need to collectively ensure that when we use ChatGPT, we're using it only when we really have to, right? And if there's a simpler way of finding out the things that you want, don't just revert to ChatGPT. It's made all the more harder by the most popular search engine in the world now has AI in it. So when you do a Google search, it kicks off its GenAI search and you don't have a choice. It just does it for you. And I'm quite sad that's kind of come about, because I think giving people the choice is really, really important, so they can make an informed decision and they can take the steps they need to in order to minimize their carbon footprint. So what I say to individuals, think about your use of AI in light of what's in the media about the use of AI, and don't think it's just free, because it's not really free. It has a cost. It's not a cost that you bear directly, but it will eventually be an environmental cost to organizations as well. Please think about the kind of unfettered use of generative AI in your organization along the same lines as if you're an individual. Think about using AI models that are small. ChatGPT is massive. There are many, really, really huge. There are many very capable and very competent smaller models that are less compute intensive and therefore less carbon intensive. So think about those. Think about different techniques for storing results from GenAI so you can kind of cache them. So if someone else asks the same question, you don't have to go to GenAI. You just serve up the response that's been generated the last time it was run. So there are technical means to reducing our use of AI. There's also a very important thing called the context window. So the context is when you type a prompt into ChatGPT, there's actually other data that gets loaded with your prompt, and it's called the context. And GenAI companies are very proud to announce that they're making the context window, the context size, bigger and bigger and bigger. So you put a whole book in there, well, yes, you can, and you might get a more accurate response. But do you realize how much more compute the AI is going to take to process that bigger context along with your prompt that you gave it. So, Jen, I think there's a lot of things, I mean, it's quite technical, but there are a lot of things that are happening at the moment where those tech developers that take this seriously, and there are some, are really looking at this carefully, right, and trying to put those mitigants in place so that we reduce the environmental impacts. Eventually, I think it's everyone's problem. I think it's also a problem for those organizations that create policies, for legislation. I think democratically elected bodies need to take note and need to maybe think about legislation and maybe look at industry policies, and industry regulators need to look into this and say, look, what does it mean for our industry? And how can we help the industry we regulate do the right thing as well? I don't think it's just an easy thing that's just going to happen, just like AI ethics isn't. And that's why actually AI sustainability for me is part of AI ethics. It is one and the same thing. Obviously AI ethics has things like privacy and so on and so forth, but actually sustainability is really a core part of it. And that's something that I'm trying to develop going forward in terms of good practice.
That's great. And exactly right that it's a multi-stakeholder approach to how we think about responsibilities, public, private, personal responsibilities around how are we using AI and generative AI. I share the same recommendations you do when I talk to clients or folks about, do you really need to use generative AI, and do you need to use it as often as you do? And is it the right answer for what you're doing? So agree with being more conscious of that as well. Okay, in our last section, it's about making it real. You've already shared a lot of really great examples, especially in that last response, about what people can do themselves and what developers can do, making smaller models, caching some of their own prompts or otherwise to reuse what they've already generated. Do you have a case study or specific experience where our listeners will get a really good sense of wrestling with some of these complexities of responsible AI, either in day-to-day work or something that you've hit? Any practical experience that you could share with our listeners?
I've got a few cases where I ran the AI ethics board. In fact, I still run an AI ethics board where we look at the use cases of AI that pose ethical challenges. There's obviously many that I can't really discuss for obvious reasons, but let me give a hypothetical one. Let's say an organization wants to use AI to deliver insights on its customers to one of their clients. There's a corporate customer. It could be an insurance company looking at its data on its customers and sending that information to a corporate client, which could be another company. And now let's say that those insights have been generated using AI. But let's say that customer, the corporate customer, is maybe an online gambling company. Let's put it that way. So a company that engages, so it's a legal entity in its own right, it's not doing anything wrong, and it employs people, and it's a legitimate organization, but it just happens to engage in something that's online gambling. How would people feel about their data being kind of sold or given to an institutional client? I think some people would go, I'm not quite happy about that, even though my data is anonymized and the gambling company can never know that's my data. There are patterns in my spending that would give that gambling company insights into maybe how people behave, which would allow it to maybe advertise more effectively, which effectively would help their bottom line. I don't know if that's something I would feel particularly good about as a customer. There's a real ethical challenge there of the use of AI. The insurance company might say, oh, hold on, this corporate client of ours, we actually lend them money. We've given them a loan, so we want to support our corporate customer, and they're a legal entity, so there's nothing wrong with that. And we have a vested interest in helping them thrive because we've lent some money to them as well. So from different perspectives, you would come to different conclusions as to whether giving that data, those data insights to the gambling company was a good thing or not. And the thing, Jen, about ethics I always find is it doesn't have a clear answer. Not many people leave an ethics board meeting going, wow, that was wonderful. We really cracked it. Most people leave going, that was actually really hard. And have we made the right decision? Ethical challenges by their very nature don't have clean answers. Ethics is contextually dependent, it's culturally dependent, based on norms and values and so on. And these really hard to pin down things, which you can't throw a computer problem at it and say, computer, is that ethical or not? Give me an answer. I mean, it just wouldn't be right, which is why ethics committees often involve people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different perspectives, and why ethics committee meetings are actually quite long and drawn out, because they do garner such emotion, interest, and discussion, right? Heated discussion. And I gave this example that I've just given to you, Jen, and your viewers. And someone said to me, well, where do you kind of draw the line, Paul? What if the insurer uses AI insights and sells it to a drinks manufacturing company conglomerate, and they manufacture alcohol? I don't really think that's right. And other people go, yeah, but that's fine. You know, alcohol is acceptable. It's not quite gambling. And then again, where do you draw the line, right? That I would say maybe that's okay, right? Drinks is more acceptable in our society. In other societies that don't allow alcohol so much, maybe not. So it becomes a very thorny problem with not very clear answers. And I'll stop there because I could talk about it for a lot longer and not get very much further.
No, I think our listeners find it very helpful to get the behind the curtain view. Both you and I have been on and are on ethics boards. It is hard. People think it's going to be so obvious what's right. It's like, no, there's so many other factors and perspectives. And you offered a few there that different cultures, different people would bring their own lenses of what's good, what's not. And all of that was brought up in an ethics review. So yes, it can be very hard. Our listeners always look forward to knowing what can they do? What can they do today, tomorrow, in their work, in their personal lives to be a more responsible player in this AI world? What are your top tips or tricks for people to leave today with?
Okay, Jen. Look, I mentioned at the beginning, embrace AI, except it is here, and the most powerful and influential companies in the world will be using it, right? I think that there's no question of that. From everything that I've seen, and I've seen some very powerful cases of generative AI, I think it is here to stay. It will change shape, right? It will mature, just like the World Wide Web went from something really quite basic to being just the way we interact online. I think GenAI will get there. So embrace it and be open to it. But I think be really careful when you use it. So every time you use ChatGPT or a ChatGPT-like system, check everything it produces with scrutiny. Be kind of skeptical of the answer and prove to yourself that it's actually correct rather than just accepting it. We refer to something called automation bias, which is the tendency for people to just keep accepting the results from GenAI and not really checking it, just assuming it's always going to be right because it is so good and it's so plausible, the answers that it gives you, like, wow, that's really insightful. But always check, right? Always check. Going back to my earlier point, think about when you're using it. Think about how often you use it. Think about the things that you use it for. Think whether or not you're getting maybe an unhealthy, I'll call it, attachment to ChatGPT, or if you find yourself thinking, God, it's absolutely brilliant, I can't live without it. I think just check in and go, these are tools. These things, they are meant to be tools. And I refer to that often. It's there to help you, not for it to be like you or a substitute for a person or a substitute for a friend. Really try and have that at the front of your mind. And ultimately, I think it's unfortunate that the term intelligence is used, artificial intelligence. It really is artificial, but people think of intelligence when they're saying, oh, it's intelligent. It's not intelligence. It is a system that's been created. It's really complicated and no one can describe how it works. I mean, you can describe the algorithm, but you can't describe when ChatGPT gets a prompt, what it's going to do. That can't predict. You have to let the algorithm in the model do its thing and give an answer. So it's kind of strange that we've created something by humans that actually, when it comes down to it, when it runs and works, we can't tell you how it works. So it's really odd. And I find it kind of paradoxical, but we have landed there. Bear in mind, it's not actually intelligent, right? It is a tool, think calculator. That's a tool. Think of it like Microsoft Office in some ways. And things that Microsoft Office does when you work is great for communicating, great for building presentations. It's a great thing to help you in your work. Think of it more like a tool for work. And Jen, if I may, I think the last thing we're going to say, if you work in an organization and you want to learn how to implement responsible AI, have a look at my book that's coming out. So I'm publishing a book with two co-authors. It's called Governing the Machine: How to Navigate the Risks of AI and Unlock Its True Potential. So that book, Governing the Machine, is all about how a large organization should put in practice everything they need to make sure that the risks of AI are mitigated and that AI is used for good. And it's got stuff in there about what people in organizations should do, what processes they should adopt, how they should change their IT systems, how they should create an ethics board, and how to really make an organization fit and ready to deploy AI so that risks are navigated. It's not a techie book. It's very much about people. It's very much about organizations. And the advice that we give there is there's a lot an organization needs to do to really make sure that if they're going to use AI either in the company or facing its customers, that there's some useful tips in there for how they should do that.
That's fantastic. I love the summary there is AI is not intelligent. It's up to us to check its work. So that's fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Paul, for joining us today. Lots of great tips here. I'll put some of the key tips into the show notes. And with that, thank you all for listening and watching AI with GenAI. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jen.